Okay, so now we're going to move into what's known as, you've collected a lot of information about the organization, you've collected information about the why, your case for support, you've collected all kinds of information about, your fast fundraising history, your donor history and characteristics. You've collected information about what's the return on investment of different strategies or different tactics that you've used. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take all this together and we're going to do a bit of analysis, and we're going to, and again, your analysis is going to be different depending on the organization that you work for, but you're going to take a look at what are some of the strengths of your organization in general, as well as the strengths of your fundraising program. Maybe, which are some of the fundraising tactics and strategies that you used in the past that really worked well for your organization. You're going to do the same thing and take a look at some of the weaknesses of your organization in general, but specifically as it relates to your fundraising program. Maybe some of the tactics you used really didn't work at all. And maybe some of the things your organization is doing, maybe there's some challenges that may prevent donors from actually giving to your organization. You'll also take a look at the opportunities. Where do you see, once you've done all this analysis, where do you see the opportunities, the biggest area for growth for your organization, based on all the information that you've just gone through? And what are some of the threats that may prevent, fundraising success in the year? And what can you do to maybe manage some of these threats? So what are we going to do now?
I have a question here on the opportunities.
Yep.
As I'm looking into the slide.
Yep.
And it is my take on this. Maybe I'm wrong. Just to please correct me.
Yep.
You have taken the opportunities from the inside data. For me, what I know and I have studied is the opportunities are always an outside area. So areas of biggest potential growth based on analysis.
Sorry.
Can we go back to the slide, please? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that was my mistake.
On analysis of organization past fundraising result.
Yeah.
How can you get the opportunity from the past fundraising result? Because opportunities are always the outside domain thing. Strength, yes, your organization strength. Weakness, yes, your organization weaknesses.
Yeah.
But opportunities and threats, they're always an outside domain thing.
I think what you're saying is true. Yes, definitely, it is mostly outside. But I think there's also, maybe once you do analysis of the data, there might also be some other opportunities.
So that can be converted into the strength then, or weakness. With your data, that should be taken into strength or weaknesses, right? Is it good or bad? Where we are good, where we are weak. But how we can look into the opportunities, I would like you to please talk about more on that area, how we can look into the opportunities, how to get the opportunities, how to capitalize those opportunities.
Right, but sometimes, well, I think the majority, sometimes the opportunities are outside, but I think at the same time, if we look at some of the tactics that you were using, maybe, there's certain tactics that you could have maybe used that you didn't use, and maybe now you want to try those tactics, right? So that would be, in a sense, based on maybe some, once you've then it will
go into the weakness. Then it will go into the weakness. If we are not, our capabilities are not good enough, still, that is our weakness. If we don't have the experts in our board or the people who are running those kind of fundraising, those are our weaknesses. We have to figure it out and we have to remove those weaknesses.
Right,
not the opportunities again.
And it's exactly in that, and how can we overcome these, and identify new opportunities, right? And some of those come, and how can we turn this weakness and transform it, right, so that it does become an opportunity for us. So I agree that a lot of times they are external, but sometimes it's how can we get through and overcome some of these weaknesses as well, so to make it I
would request you to please, not now, if not now, maybe tomorrow or sometime. How we can look into the opportunities, what vision should we have to look into the opportunities, what are the really laying opportunities around us for the as a not-for-profit organization, which we might be missing and looking into. So I would like you to please just cover up that area now, today or tomorrow, whenever you want.
For sure, yeah. And some of the opportunities, it might also be looking at what are other organizations that work in your space, what are they doing? What are some of the things that they're doing well that we can share? And actually, one of my objectives this evening was really, and we'll maybe only take about 5 minutes or so, and just again because of timing, but is to actually break into 2 groups where you can share some of your strengths and weaknesses, and maybe you can learn from the others. Maybe there's things that the other organizations are doing that are in a similar space that you can learn and say, oh, that's going to be an opportunity for us, right? Or so a lot of the opportunities, as you said, it is external. It's maybe what others are doing that you can learn from them, or you can maybe learn how did others overcome some of the weaknesses they had and change that into an opportunity, right? And then I put in here, you know, some of the threats. So maybe if we can maybe break into two groups. And one group will take a look at this, you know, they can have a discussion about the strengths and weaknesses of their respective organizations. Ideally, it would be great if one person in the group could maybe, you know, jot down a few notes or whatever, and then we can share them globally. We can come back again. And maybe the second group can look at some of the opportunities and threats. And it could be facing their organization. And again, it's going to be more sharing, you know, how people view the opportunities for their organization, and maybe we can learn from one another as well in that regard. So we'll take maybe about 5 to 7 minutes or so, Nargis, and then we'll maybe report back, you know, 2 to 3 minutes per group, and then we can continue on from there. So I think this is going to be done automatically, right, Nargis? So you can take 5 minutes, and again, just maybe you can just appoint, you know, one person who can, you know, jot down some of the, you know, some of the successes, some of the weaknesses. So one group will focus on that. Second group will focus on some of the opportunities, and it may be what others are doing that they can learn from, and what some of the threats are.
I'm opening the rooms right now. If you have any questions, you would have the opportunity to put a question in chat and send it my way. And that way I'll convey it to Vida. And Vida will be in one of the rooms with you, and Imam Irshad would be in another room in case both of them are fundraising experts, in case you need some help. Here we go. There are Asaf and Tazeen. Did you want to join your rooms? Tazeen, you're in room 2. I think it should have given you a... Did you want to unmute? I can't hear you if you're talking.
Hello. Yeah, which room and how can I join?
You should have gotten a notification asking for you to join.
I'm sorry. I believe I missed that notification, or oh, breakout.
Yeah. Brother Asaf?
Yeah, could you send me that notification again, please?
Let me see how that's done.
They're all equally, they're all equally important, you know, knowing your strength, knowing your weaknesses, so you can work on that, knowing the strengths, so you can better them or utilize them again.
Brother Faiz?
Opportunities, yes, and threats. So how to mitigate the threats, right?
You're not in
so they're
there.
all equally important.
Are you in the session, in the room number 1 with the others? Because you're in the main session. And Brother Asaf, I did send you another one. You should see it somewhere if you just look around on your screen, maybe. Okay.
Oh, okay. ये 8:30 तक।
Sorry, I was just sorry, I was just putting my screens back in place. Can you still see the screen in the SWOT analysis screen?
No, we can't.
Oh, you can't see that. Okay, so then I have to go back in and let me just I'll go back to share screen again. Here, share. Okay. Okay, perfect. Is everyone back now? I can't really.
No, we still have 4 people missing.
Oh, okay, that must be the other group then, right? You sent them a message, right, about. Okay. We'll just maybe wait a few more minutes until they come. Yeah, it's maybe required a little bit more time, but.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I'm Tazeen from Justice for All.
Oh, from Justice for All. Okay, nice to meet you, Sister Tazeen. Do you want, was it in your group, Sister Tazeen, did you speak about the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats, or all of them?
Yeah, exactly. We did a SWOT analysis, and the other members are going to join soon.
Okay. They have joined, I think.
Okay, they've already joined. Okay.
Here. Yes.
So I'm conscious that there's about 20 minutes left. I can foresee that we probably needed a longer session for the amount we wanted to cover. But anyhow, Sister Tazeen, maybe you can just maybe mention one strength, and maybe I'll just get maybe one person to mention a strength, one a weakness, one an opportunity, one a threat, and then maybe we can compile them later on and share them with the group after the session. Again, it's just really due to time, but hopefully you had an opportunity to exchange ideas within your group. So maybe Sister Tazeen, do you want to just maybe mention one of the strengths of either your personal organization or another organization that was mentioned in your discussions?
Yeah, basically, I can tell you the strength of my organization. What is my opinion about the strength of my organization? Basically, Justice for All is working for human rights advocacy. So I feel that we are talking about the things, we are running the campaigns about the things that people are interested in, as our Save India Fascism campaign, Save Uyghur. So, I mean, this is something that people are, at the moment, people are interested in. Right now, we are focused on Save India from Fascism. So people are interested in it. People want to save the Muslims and the minorities of India from the fascism and from the brutalities of the Hindutva groups. So this is one of the strengths. Then we have been working since about 20 years, and many people in the community know that we are working well. So they know the strength of the advocacy. They know the results of our advocacy efforts. They know that we are one of the very few Muslim groups who are working for different campaigns across the world. So basically, we have a limited database of donors, but these people know, and these people are aware of the significance of our advocacy efforts. So this is our strength, I believe.
Okay, so basically a high affinity. Your donors have a strong affinity with your organization, and your organization has strong credibility. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing. Does anybody want to share anything about a weakness? It could be about their organization, or if they don't want to share a weakness about their organization, it could be about, another organization that you discussed as a group. Anybody want to share something in that area? Nobody talked about any weaknesses. Your organizations are all great, fantastic. Your fundraising programs are all
I can
super
say
stellar.
a weakness.
Okay, Crystal, how about you? Okay, perfect.
So as we framed it, how to sell a dream that's not yet completely tangible. So because we don't have a mosque yet, when we're still so new and budding, it's that's, I guess, a weakness for us, right? Is that we don't have the recognition, we don't have the clear vision yet. So
yeah, that would be fundamental. You'd have to really, speak with the key, people involved in that project, and really try and concretize that vision, because that's going to be essential, to make sure that your fundraising is a success as you go forward. So thank you very much for sharing that.
I'm actually wondering if that wouldn't be a strength as well, just because they have a small community that does not have a mosque. So, I mean, it'll be an opportunity for sure.
It could be, but I think really as the way that that Crystal presented it was the fact that, if you don't have that clear vision or what exactly you want to achieve, it's going to be really hard to sell that to donors, right? So that has to be crystal clear what you want to do, right? Because that lack of clarity, you might get maybe, okay, sure, I'll give you $100, but you're definitely not going to get, the large sums of money, because people want to know that, yes, you have a clear vision, this is what you're going, and this is what my money is going to be used for, right? So you'd want to really demonstrate that to get much larger donations, for sure.
How about the people responsibility? Like people don't feel responsible to carry the charges for the market. Like they don't have the responsibility that we have to build a mosque in the West here and be responsible. What is it considered weakness, and how can we fix it?
You're saying that people don't have a sense of responsibility in the sense that they don't feel that they should build mosques? I'm not quite certain if I.
Yes, yeah. So in terms of operational costs, like people, they would like to come and just pray and leave. They don't have the sense of this is not a main.
Then I think you really have to, again, you're going to have to strengthen your overall case for support, right? So you're going to have to really tell them why this mosque is important, why you need your support. So it's really the why factors, right? What's going to happen if they don't support the mosque, right? What impact will their donation actually have? So you really have to go through some of the points we discussed and really sharpen that argument, right? And it might even be a role for some of your volunteers to get involved. Some of your actual donors, you can maybe bring them in and use them or get them to do testimonials about why they support, right? And encourage others. So it's really a question of fine-tuning your case, your argument about the why, which is so essential too for fundraising success. Anybody want to talk about any? Did we talk about opportunities? Not so much. Anybody want to talk about any opportunities that came up in their group?
Yes, there are a lot of opportunities are there, especially when you are working in the marketing area. I have seen and I have observed since from last 5 years that most of our organization, I'm talking about the masajid, they are not fully trained, and logistically they are not working in the marketing area. The basic problem is with our Muslims, especially in Canada. I've been in Canada from almost 25 years. And I've done a lot of education. I've got a lot of education from here, and I've worked in a big organization as well. So I have seen when I'm working with those specific Muslim community, even they are commercial business or they are the religious institution, they take marketing as an expense, not as an investment. So when you don't take it as an investment, you cannot calculate the ROI. And
Totally agreed. I'm not certain. Am I still connected here? I'm not certain if I'm. Very interesting. Oh, I'm not certain if I lost you or did I lose. Can you hear me, Sister Nargis?
Yep, I can. Hear
you. Okay. I might have lost Brother Majasam.
Okay, let's continue, and when he joins us back.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, we lost him. Does anybody want to talk about a threat? I know we have only about 15 minutes left. Does anyone want to share a threat that was discussed in their group? Okay, but anyhow, even if you didn't discuss it, I mean, there's certain, I mentioned a few threats on the screen as well in terms of obviously the pandemic. It's always a threat. We don't know if there's going to be another variant that might affect, the economy. It might affect your donors' willingness to support your organization. There's possibilities of economic downturns. There's always a lot of threats, and again, it's how can you manage those and turn some of those threats into opportunities. Okay, so I'm going to move right along because we still have quite a number. So we've done that. Okay, so the next one is really going to be about, or the next slide or the next topic that we're going to delve into is how do you go about establishing your fundraising goal? So again, your goals, it's really going to depend on what your organization wants. Are you looking for rapid growth? Are you looking for moderate growth? Are you looking to maintain the status quo? Are you looking at short term? Do you want to have short-term results, or are you really looking to build for the long term? And again, what resources are available to achieve your fundraising goals? Your fundraising goal look very different if you have just one staff member that's going to do all your fundraising activities versus if you have 5 or even maybe 10 full-time staff members. A lot of goals, or some of you may have heard about SMART goals. I mean, it's very popular in a lot of different mediums. So there's also SMART fundraising goals. And by SMART, we mean here specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So when we say specific, you know, sometimes when you ask some organizations, well, how much would you like us to raise? They're like, well, as much as you can, definitely more than last year. They don't really give you a very specific amount. So this is very essential, you know, to specify a specific dollar amount to be raised. And it doesn't only have to be a dollar amount to be raised. It might be, well, we want to obtain, you know, a certain amount of new donors, or we want to have a certain percentage more in total donations compared to last year. Sister Marine, yes?
Just curious, you mentioned sometimes boards will say, we want you to raise more than you raised last year. By how much should we realistically be raising our fundraising goals every year?
Yeah, well, again, it depends on the factors that you're looking, you know, do they want aggressive growth or do they want a more moderate growth? And it depends on the resources that you have to conduct. You know, it's one thing to say, okay, last year we raised $1 million, now we want 5. But if you're not willing to invest, and actually I will take a point that Brother Mujassim said, you know, sometimes organizations, they don't want to invest in communications and marketing. Sometimes they also don't want to invest in fundraising. You know, they expect it will all be volunteer run and volunteer led. Well, volunteers have a role, but sometimes in terms of your overall strategy and to make sure that things get done, you still need to have a number of, ideally a few fundraising professionals on board, right? So it's a lot of factors. And again, it's really going to be different for each organization. It's going to depend on the maturity level of the organization versus a new organization. So there's a lot of factors to consider. And that's why when we did that initial SWOT analysis, that helps you to really reflect on, okay, where are some of those opportunities? Where can we, I think really this tactic we can really increase, or this one, forget it. So it's really going to be after you do your own analysis for your own organization, then you can say, well, this is what I recommend. Based on this, I really think we could grow by this amount in this area, forget it, you know, so it'll be your own analysis at the end. And again, you want to be specific, you know, how many, maybe one of your goals might be to say, well, I want 100 fundraisers to do online campaign pages, right? Or maybe you want to provide iftars to 50 low-income families. So again, be very, very specific in what you want to achieve. So it's not always about the money. It could also be tied to the program, number of donors. And the other key thing about those goals is to write them down so that everybody knows. And of course, you are creating your fundraising plan. So it is going to be a written document that you will all agree on, right? Second thing is to make sure it's measurable. So you have your goal, and at the end of the year, or at the end of your campaign period, whatever it is, maybe it's a month long, you know, the month of Ramadan, then you can go back and you can say, okay, this is, yes, we achieved our goal in this area, this area, and this area. We didn't achieve it here. Here we surpassed. So again, it has to be, and that's the value of having very specific numbers in terms of what your goals are going to be, whether fundraising or whether, again, number of donors, whatever. It has to be ambitious, but not only ambitious, but attainable. Like if the task is too easy, let's say last year you raised $10,000 from this particular activity or this particular fundraising stream, and maybe your goal this year will be 5,000. Well, you might attain it, but you might not feel a sense of accomplishment because you didn't even meet what you did last year, right? So you want to be ambitious. So normally you want to make it more than what you did in the past, right? To encourage people, but you don't want to make it so challenging that people feel deflated and, oh, this is an impossible goal. I'll never be able to get there, right? Relevant. So again, always, whatever you're fundraising for, whatever the dollar amounts, you always have to connect it back to your mission. So it always has to be, you have to show that connection and the relevance in there. For example, this year we're going to raise $100,000 and it's going to enable us to cover maybe the tuition fees of 20 low-income kids at Islamic school. So again, it's very relevant because we know exactly what this $100,000 is going to go for. And again, your SMART goals should always be time-based. You know, it could be a month. I know a lot of you are planning for a Ramadan campaign, so you're going to make your, you know, you're going to decide now what tactics you're going to use for Ramadan. It's going to be a month, and what are the different goals. But again, you'll have time-based for the whole year. What are we going to do for the whole year in this area, in this tactic, with this tactic, with this tactic? Okay, great. I actually have a little sample planning tool that I can show you very fast. I'm probably going to be going a little bit quick through the material now, only because we really only have 8 minutes left. I'm like, whoa, okay. But anyways, these are some of the different indicators that you can use. This is just a sample tool, so you can take a look at what, again, this is to help you in terms of making your goal for this year. So for example, you can take a look at, okay, how much was raised, the gross amount raised 3 years ago? How much did we raise this year? You know, what's my goal for next year? Well, it's probably going to be a little bit more. And then you can actually then at the end of the year, you can actually measure, and this will be your actual figures. And then how much am I projecting 3 years down the road, with a certain amount of growth. So you'll do that with your gross, you'll do it with your net. And we already talked about that your gross is, once you subtract your actual direct cost, that'll be your net. Again, your cost per raise a dollar. How much did it cost you to raise a dollar for all your programming? What was it like 3 years ago? How much is it now? What do we project for next year? So these are just some of the different indicators that you can use to measure performance and to project and to put your goals. Again, number of donors, we talked about that. How many donors were you able to renew? What was it like 3 years ago? What are we at now? What is our goal going to be for next year and for 3 years down the road? Number of monthly donors, number of major gift donors. Just a few comments in there. Ideally, I would have liked you to take a few minutes and write your own SMART goals, but I guess I'm going to have to give you that as homework because
it's a good idea to share this thing. I said it's a good idea to share those kind of templates so people will have understanding and they should prepare their own. I agree with that. But this will help everybody. Yeah, thank you very much for this.
Yeah, and I actually just put a small one down here just because, again, we just time limitations, but just to give you an idea here, I put here, this year's Ramadan campaign will run from April 2nd to May 2nd. So again, you have a very clear, specific time frame. Our goal is to raise $100,000 to enable day support programming for 25 Muslims with disabilities. I have a friend of mine who works in that space, so I thought, let me use her organization. Last year, we raised $90,000. So although this year's goal is aggressive, with additional volunteers, we really feel that $100,000 will be possible. So again, tried to cover, it was very specific. You can measure it at the end of the month. It gives you a time frame, and it also, it is attainable because it's not so much of a drastic jump from how much we raised in the past. So that's just an example, but of course you can write your own for your own organization. Okay, so how do you decide which fundraising tactics to use? I know we've been talking a little bit about tactics. There's a number of different tactics that you can use. We spoke about the fact that one of the ways that you measure or decide which tactic to use is the return on investment or the cost to raise a dollar, but that's just one factor that you can use to select which one. Ultimately, it's going to depend on some of the goals that your organization wants to receive or to accomplish. For example, if you want to acquire donors, so donor acquisition is more expensive, you might want to use direct mail. Sorry, I think I have a little slide in here. Let me just go back to the next one. Yeah, so here we go. So these are just some of the these are more or less annual campaign fundraising tactics that you'll see, and then we'll talk about the major gift ones in the last few minutes. So direct mail, it's great to acquire new donors. Again, it's expensive, but if you look at the overall long-term lifetime value of your donors, it can be worth it. Crowdfunding, email, digital marketing campaigns, again, those are great tools to use to acquire new donors. Ambar, tomorrow we'll talk about a lot of that digital marketing in greater detail. And again, the cost to raise a dollar, I suspect, I don't have the actual figures, but I suspect it's a lot lower than direct mail. Just the mere fact it's popularity. So again, she'll probably get into sharing more figures with you. If you have very long-term dedicated donors, committed donors, again, they probably already use direct mail. So you wouldn't want to lose those donors. They're very used to putting their checks in the mail and sending it into you. So yeah, again, for renewing and engaging long-term committed donors, you'd probably still want to use direct mail. Other tactics for sure in terms of renewing or engaging existing donors are events, especially fundraising dinners. And I know we talked about that a few times, and also in some of the breakaway groups. This is a great tool, certainly in the pre-pandemic period. Obviously during the pandemic, it wasn't as attractive, and that's why it's good to have a number of different tactics. But the other thing to remember about that is that if your organization has a wide membership base, then those dinners can be very successful. But if you're a new startup organization, you don't have a wide membership base, it might not be as successful. So again, it depends on who you are, how many people are affiliated with your organization. It's also very important to create an excellent donor experience, because you want people to come back. You want this to be, a key event that they'll return again. Again, if you're looking to renew lapsed donors or upgrade current donors or even thank donors, one of the best routes to go is a telemarketing campaign. And this can be very valuable, especially if you have volunteers. I mean, if you have to pay for people to make calls, your return on investment, of course, will be much lower. Now, one of the things that a lot of the tactics mentioned here are annual campaign tactics. So it's great to get a lot of people involved, to reach a lot of people, but you might not always be getting the large gifts. Now, I remember Brother Majassim in our breakout session, he mentioned he did an event, and he raised more than $250,000. So again, that's fantastic. It depends on your market. Like I think in Mississauga, as I know, some of those dinners, they raise a lot of money. Other markets, maybe not so much. So again, you'll have to assess depending on where you are. Excuse me one second.
That's, you know what, I agree with you. It depends on the number as well. But it also depends the people on the board, how much they are engaged with the big donors at a personal level. Because most of the money, once what happens, how people get motivated during the fundraising, when there are multiple, like 5, 10 big donors are there, then other people start getting motivation, right? And when they get motivated, even he planned to come to donate $100, he comes up with $500, $1,000. And that's the point where you get. And in order to get those things, you have to do the proper marketing. You have to have a good plan, nice presentation, what we are going to do, what we are doing now, what you have done with the past donation. Because people are more interested before donating a single cent, what we have done with their donation money. They want that. They want to know, and this is their right. So 100%. Clarity in the financial books is very important. That is very important.
100% agreed. And it also depends on the wealth of the area in which you operate as well, because obviously some communities are wealthier than others, right? So, okay. So the thing I wanted to actually stress here is that if you only focus on what we call the annual campaign tactics that we mentioned before, you might be missing a lot of money. A lot of the studies show that actually 80–90% of donations actually come from the top 10 to 20% of your donors. So you want to make sure that you're also tapping into those, donors that have a higher capacity. And you'd want to be able to identify who are those individuals, build relationships with those individuals, learn more about their interests and passions, and ultimately invite them to make a significant gift to your organization. We already talked about the fact that major gifts, it means different things for different people or different organizations, depending on your size. I'm not going to go into that too much. I put on this slide here, I'm going to talk a little bit more in our last few minutes about major gifts and how to go about building those relationships. But just before I move on to that, I wanted to just touch like 30 seconds or so on planned gifts. That's another area that I don't think is as well marketed or known in Muslim circles, in the sense of donors to Muslim organizations. I don't know how much Muslim organizations are actually promoting planned giving to their donors. And there's some donors, they don't have the capacity to make a major gift in their lifetime. However, they do actually have wealth, but it might be tied up in their house. It might be tied up in so many different things. And some of them, they will be willing and open to make an estate gift to you. And some of those estate gifts can be pretty large. Oftentimes I think the average estate gift right now, depends on the organization, but I know certainly at the university, it's like the average estate gift is $100,000. So you could even get 5-6 people to make estate gifts. Over time, that will help to certainly help to further develop and transform some of your programs. So it's not to be neglected in that area. Sorry.
What is an estate? Yeah, what is an estate gift?
So an estate gift, it just means like when people are doing their wills, like a lot of times nowadays, people do what's called gift planning. So, I mean, everyone knows ultimately at one point in time in the future, we will all leave this earth, right? And so sometimes what people will do before they pass away, and sometimes people do it very early, like maybe in their 50s or 60s, they start to look about their will, right? And they'll say, okay, well, a certain percentage, of course, is going to go to your kids and your family and everything else. But then maybe there's others where they want to support certain organizations. So they can always already put that down in their will. And depending on your vehicles that you're using, sometimes like on your online giving forms, your direct mail forms, you can actually have a box saying, and ask the person to check, well, it's not obligatory. It's like a free, you can freely disclose or not disclose, but you can have a box there saying, yes, I would like to learn more information about donating to your organization. Or yes, I have already included, X organization in my will. So then you already know, wow, this person's already included us in the will. So then this group or this person comes into another group that you're going to continue to build relationships with and build close, because if they leave you in your will, it means that you're part of their family in a sense, right? So you'd want to continue to build that relationship with them, right? So there's a lot of different ways I put in here, some of the different ways in terms of wills, bequests, life insurance. Again, that would probably require a whole separate workshop. So we're covering a lot of ground here, but our time today is actually quite limited. So let me just go very quickly. I don't know, I know we've already passed our time. I don't know if people have another 5 minutes or so to spend, or if people have to leave. I'm sorry, I took to get it within the time block, but there's always a lot of material.
No, carry on. That's fine.
Carry on, and whoever needs to leave will leave. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I'm sorry, but we will have to break up for prayer. But is there any way that we can share this these slides, because it seems to be more slides coming up, or for the slides are done?
Yeah, well, exactly. The other slides are really about about securing large gifts. So it's more about how do you go about identifying those major gift donors? How do you turn around, or how do you end up qualifying them and see whether they actually are truly major gift donors? How do you go about building the relationship with them? And then there's a little slide in here about making the ask, and then there's just an overview in terms of some of the different areas that we covered, and then that's pretty well at the end of it all. But I can 100% share it with you, and maybe in the future maybe we can just focus in on major gifts. And actually, to be honest with you, when she first talked to me, she did tell me, okay, we'll talk about personal giving, major gifts. And I thought, well, it was also important to talk about the overall fundraising plan, because major gifts is like one component within your overall plan, right? But no, unfortunately,
I can actually share the video. So if you continue, whoever stays. And then whoever needs to go, I'll just share the video. Just send me an email, or I can just share with whoever has been registered today.
Yeah, that's the best idea, that whomsoever you have the registration, you have the email, right?
Yes,
so
I do.
I just share the video or share the presentation.
Or the presentation. Okay.
Presentation would be better. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to continue, Vida, for those of you who can stay for 5 more minutes, and let's just cap it at 5 minutes.
Yep.
Sure. Okay. And maybe I'll just see a show of hands just to see how many people are actually staying, just in case everybody's going. I know you're all in different time zones, so I have to. That's one of the challenges. Well, the good and bad, in the sense that different time zones, of course, the time for Salah comes in at different times, in virtual events. So okay, so let's just move very quickly then onto how do you go about getting the big gifts. So like I said, a lot of the different tactics that we just talked about right now, those are what we call annual campaigns. So they're usually short time frames, but you're focusing more on getting smaller gifts, but from a lot more people. Now our focus is really now we're going to take a look at how do we get bigger gifts. So now you're going to be really focusing on a smaller targeted group of donors to really secure some of those big gifts. Okay, so when we say big gifts, we already said the size of the gift, it really varies. And the other thing is that the time frame is a little bit longer. Well, than certainly a lot of the annual campaign. Mostly annual campaign, if you're looking at a month period or maximum 1 year period. To actually secure major gifts, you're looking at building a relationship over a period of 12 months. It could even be up to 3-year period. So it really depends on the readiness and the current relationship of that donor to your organization. They already have a great relationship, then that time frame can be condensed. But if the relationship is a little bit warm, but it's not right there yet, they're not right at the point where they can give a major gift, then it could take up to 3 years. So you'd want to be focusing your efforts on a small group and building the relationship with them. Okay, so the first the very first thing whenever you are building or you could say building a major gift program is really to identify which are the donors, who are going to be your major gift prospects. So if you are the main fundraiser at your organization or one of the key fundraisers in there, you should already have an idea who your major gift prospects are. And I'm just wondering, and my original question here was, how many of you can name the top 10 donors to your organization? I don't know. I have a few people on the line that I can see. Can anybody name their top 10? You don't have to name their actual names. Just put up your hand and just say, yes, I know who my top 10 donors are. Anybody know who their top 10 donors are? Not seeing any hands go up. Okay. Oh, a few people. Okay, so that's good. Yeah, you should. If you're in the fundraising, you would want to know who your top 10 donors to your organization are. You'd even want to know who your top 25 and maybe even your top 100. In addition to that, so that's certainly one pool that you can start to take a look at to identify who are going to be your top superstar major gift prospects. You'd also want to take a look at who are the donors to your organization for the last 3 years. Who's given every single year for the last 3 years? How about the last 5 years? How about the last 10 years? Because again, that'll show their affinity with your organization, especially if they've been giving at significant amounts.
Sorry, I actually have a question.
Oh, sorry. I thought your hand was up with respect to your organization. Sorry, go right
Yeah,
ahead.
no, that was also it, but I just also had a question. I just wanted to clarify the meaning of the term in terms of life credit.
Oh, life credit, yes. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's true. Those are some kind of in-house terminology. So life credit, it just means how much have they given to your organization since they started to give to your organization? What's the total amount that they've given? So it's not just in the last year, but maybe they've been given to your organization for the last 10 years. How much have they given total overall?
That's also called CLTV, customer lifetime value.
Yes. But customer lifetime value, I think it's not only about how much money they've given, but it could also be wider than that as well. It could also be maybe, maybe they volunteered on the board. Maybe it could be all other kinds of contributions. So
no, when I'm talking about in terms of the revenue, we also take it as CLTV.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. So absolutely. So again, who else in terms of your target group, where are you going to find these top major gift prospects? You want to look at those individuals who have the greatest affinity to your organization. So for example, your key volunteers, your board members. So a lot of those, again, those are the first places that you're going to look at in terms of, who has major gift potential, right? Who are the top donors to some of your targeted fundraising campaigns? For example, if you had an event, so we talked about fundraising, fundraising dinners or events, maybe the majority of people at your fundraising dinner are giving you $1,000. And all of a sudden there's one person who comes and says, no, I'm going to put down $50,000. You'd want to know who that person is, because if they can give you $50,000 at this event, then with building a relationship with them, maybe they can give you a lot more. Or even if it's a crowdfunding campaign, maybe the average person is giving you $100. And all of a sudden somebody puts down $5,000 on your crowd fundraising, you'd want to have an idea. Who is that person? What's their relationship to us? Who do they know? Again, it's about building the relationship. Yes, Sister Selwa?
I just had a question. Does this analysis include lapsed donors, or are these just our donors who are actively donating?
So, okay, if you're doing your major gift prospect pool, it could also include lapsed donors. So that is a very good question. Generally, you'd want ones that are warmer, but even lapsed donors, sometimes what happened, there's a donor, sometimes what happens, there's a change in leadership at your organization or staff personnel change, and then the new staff comes on board and they didn't make the connection with some of your old donors. So again, you'd want to meet with some of the donors who used to give at a very high level of giving and now no longer give. So that's the next step after identifying. But if you see, again, you're looking at the top donors overall. So if we're looking at their lifelong credit or their constituent lifetime value, some of those donors might pop up, even though they haven't given recently, but they might pop up because they've given a lot to your organization in the past. It's just that you've ignored them for 5 years, maybe 10. That happens to me too. So I totally feel your pain with that. So, anyhow, so you would want to, again, identify in there any of your top fundraising campaigns. If there's donors that are giving at a much higher level than others, you'd want to be taking a look and getting more information about those people. What do you want to learn about them? Well, you'd want to find out, what are their links to your organization? What's their affinity? How many events have they attended? Are they involved in any of your programs and services? And you not only want to find out about your relationship with your organization, but what kind of gifts is this person giving to other organizations? And I'm not saying go and do kind of, underhanded information or whatever, but you're going to be looking at publicly available information. So sometimes some organizations, they actually publish, gift ranges for certain donors, and you can tell, okay, well, they've given between 25 to 100 or 50,000 to this organization. So that gives you an idea about, what their giving is like, and it helps you to identify what's their capacity like as well. So once you've come up with your list, I would say start with 10 names. If you don't really have a very developed major gift program, start with 10 names. Maybe for year one, you can work with 10 names, and then you can expand to 25 names and grow bigger like that. You don't want to take on too many, because normally major gifts, you're going to be doing it in conjunction with your annual campaign tactics, right? And your next step, once you've identified, let's say, your top 10 list, you're going to set up meetings to meet with them and to learn more. And the meeting could be with you as a lead fundraiser, but it could also be, and ideally also with, one member of your leadership team, maybe it's with the CEO of your organization, the executive director, or a key board member. So you'd have to see who has the best relationship or who could build the best relationship with this person and make a decision from there. So once you've identified your list, you're going to set up the meeting, and you should be very clear about what the purpose of your meeting is going to be. And when you meet with them, you're going to say, look, we noticed that you have been supporting our organization for a number of years, and we want to learn more about your motivations, your interests. Why have you been supporting our organization? How do you feel about us? What do you think we can do better? How do we compare with other organizations? And you might even want to ask them, what other charities do you give to and why? And ultimately, how would you like to be more involved? So again, this is really kind of your fact finding. So originally you did a bit of research on them, but that was just from your own database, maybe from other general Google sources. Now you actually want to have a face-to-face and really learn more about them and what they feel about you. Now, if this individual turns around and says, I love your organization, I think you're doing fantastic work, I totally want to get more involved. If everything comes up, yes, 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 then that is a person for sure you'd want to have in your major gift so-called targeted group for special treatment. And I know in another session, some people talked about treating some donors a little more special because they have a bit closer relationship or a higher capacity than others. So from there, your next step, once you've and if they say that, no, I really don't like your organization, I used to give you a long time ago, but you've totally ignored me for the last 5 years or 10 years, then maybe you're going to have to work with them a little bit more. You might not put them into that super special group. You might put them in, maybe we can turn these people around, but it's going to take a bit more time. So maybe instead of 3 years to get that major gift, it might be 5, maybe 10, right? So, so the next thing, once you qualify them, you're going to build a relationship with them. I put a number of different ways that you can build a relationship with some of your more important prospects, you can say, your major gift prospects, and again, a lot of it is the personal touch. So some people mentioned that in the breakaway group, you might want to give them a tour of your facilities, or, send them a handwritten note. You know how many people get handwritten notes nowadays? Very, very few. You send them a nice e-card paper, they actually pick it up in the mail. And especially because some of these major gift donors, they tend to be sometimes older. So, there's that more personal feeling. Invite them to an event, even maybe behind the scenes. Maybe you have a big speaker coming in for an event. You can actually maybe set up a nice little coffee with the speaker so they feel very, that special touch. Wow, I've got to go and meet the speaker, or invite them to lunch, meet them at their home, introduce them to some of your board members, and ask them for advice. People love to be asked for advice. So again, all of that, different ways to build the relationship. Sorry, how are we doing for time? Oh, wow. Okay, so we said 5 more minutes, not really 5. We're getting towards the end now, just a couple of slides. I don't know if anyone has any questions so far about anything that we've covered. He's good? Okay, perfect. So, you've been working on the relationship over a 6 year or 6 month, 12 months, or even 24-month period. Throughout all those different touch points that you're meeting with the donor is getting a better idea about who you are, what your vision is, as in your organization's vision. You're getting a clear idea about their interests and motivations and passions. And ultimately, you're trying to move them to a point where they are ready to have the conversation about making a significant gift, right? So then at that point, you'd be, really trying to narrow down their interests and asking them which parts of the programming are the greatest interest to them. If they'd want to be maybe receiving a more specific proposal in a particular area. So again, there's a bit of a back and forth, and then you can meet with them again when it comes to the ask, get them feedback on the proposal that you sent to them, ask them if they have any, what are their feedback, their thoughts, any reservations about the proposal. And then depending on what their thoughts are, you can go in and make the official ask. And it might be you making that ask, or it might be, depending on the size of the ask, it might be your executive director, your CEO, maybe the head of your board. Like, it'll all depend. Again, you'd have to really select the person that has the best relationship with this person to make that ask, because usually it does make an important difference as well in terms of who makes the ask in it all. And if they decide no, that they decide that no, they're not in a position to make that gift, then you need to find out at that point, what is the reason? Maybe the ask amount was too high, maybe they're not ready, maybe it's going to be a next year, maybe it's not that program was interest. So again, it's a period of negotiation at that point. And then ultimately, they have made the gift, you can agree on the terms and payment terms and all of that. And then ultimately they fall into what we call the stewardship stage. I didn't put that on here. Again, that's just because Brother Shad, who was on the call, he will be going into that in more details, I think, on Wednesday evening. So hopefully you'll join him then. So I'm just going to get to my last page here. Sorry, I think my voice is getting a little finished here. So this is just a little bit of a summary. Any questions before I get into the final summary and wrap up? Everything's crystal clear. Okay, perfect. Or maybe you're all tired and you're like, oh, wow, this is really long workshop that's going on here. So ultimately, okay, what are some of the, the key things that we learned today? Again, sometimes it's always good to kind of review things at the very end. Okay, we talked about, what are some of the documents and the key information that you need to collect when you're building your fundraising plan, how to go about analyzing it. So we talked about, the importance of, reviewing the strategic plan, your case for support, past fundraising results, doing a bit of a SWOT analysis to try and identify, again, strengths, weaknesses, what are some of the opportunities. Talked about goal setting and making sure that your goals are smart. And your goals have to be done in collaboration with key internal stakeholders, your leadership, board members. Talked about strategic decision making, how to determine which fundraising tactics to use depending on the fundraising goals that you want to establish. And we talked about some of the variable factors to consider, not only return on investment, but the time frame, the size of the gift, target group, number of donors, resources available. And finally, we talked very quickly about building relationship, how to go about identifying a small group of top donors and prospects to be moved throughout what we call the donor cycle, from cultivating them to move them into AX prep and ultimately to steward them for their gift, which is basically thank them for their gifts.